And we're finally live. So I had it going a second ago and I hit the wrong button. So, hey, William, welcome to the live chat. You are first by a pretty good margin, it seems like. All right. So I'm going to settle down. I mean, I barely had time to eat and all that kind of stuff, but I had deer meat. So I'm ready to roll. If any of you are vegetarians, I apologize. But around here, we eat a lot of deer meat. If we had hamburgers, sloppy joes, anything like that, it was always venison. Hey guys, so this video, oh my goodness, too many habits doing videos. This live chat is going to be about queen rearing up front, and then we'll do some questions and answers as well. I mean, it's not just strictly queen rearing, but I would definitely wanted to touch on that because in some parts of the United States and other areas, it is time to raise queens. We're getting close to that here. I probably could try to raise queens right now. I usually wait another week or so. Right now, our weather's not very hot. And I have a couple buddies of mine who are actually raising queens not too far south of me. So we're fixing to do that. Hey, backyard bees, Justin Mitchell, all you guys, yay for deer meat. Someone's got to. And oh, man. Anyways, dumb question. Can you put a queen excluder on the bottom of a hive to keep the queen from swarming away? What will happen? Thanks. Okay, that gets a little interesting. I'm going to take care of that and quit listening to your husband on your phone. Tell you what, boy, he sounds great. All right. Anyways, back to that question. So the thing you have to watch out for with that is as the queens shrink down during swarming, they go through the procedure of swarming, they're chasing that queen around. She drops significantly in body weight, and many queens are actually still able to slip through the queen excluder. Now, if she's laying heavily, and there's difference opinion there, but I've seen queens go through excluders. It's not very common when they're actively laying, but if they've stopped laying, then it very well could still go through there. And some people will say that they'll never leave their queen. I've seen some that didn't have any queens in there. Was it because of that? I don't know. Me personally, I've never tried that out, so I don't know how well that works. I do know that there used to be some entrance queen excluders that were sold. I don't. You still might be able to find those in some places, but I don't know how well that would work or not. Yeah, drones. Yeah, drones can't get through as well. Brent's right. You'll have to create another entrance for that. There's just a lot of headaches that go into that. And this is one thing I like to say when it comes to swarming and all that kind of stuff, because we're all fixing to face that over the next month or two. I've got some hives that are looking really close, and south of me, people are catching swarms. There's actually a couple swarms that were caught in Knoxville, and a couple other places in Tennessee. So it's happening. These are on really healthy, strong colonies that are running out of cavity space, I would bet, because we don't have a lot of significant nectar flow right now. There's a little bit, but they're not getting plugged up with honey. But one of the things that you can do is definitely go ahead and make a little split off of your large colonies. If you're unsure, I would rather get 50 pounds of honey from a big colony and have made a good, strong, 5-frame nuke off of it. And that's just me, though, because I like having lots of bees. We sell them and other things, but I would rather keep them. I hate losing swarms. I mean, it happens. I think I probably lost 5 or 6 last year. But I would rather take a reduction in honey and keep my bees than have your bees swarm. Because when they swarm, a lot of times you lose the honey crop as well. But we're going to be showing you some videos on swarm prevention, but pulling a good frame of brood periodically. And then once we kind of get to that point, we're going to be showing you videos. But definitely, if you're in the South, you'll have to watch out for that. Yeah, you got to love Orange Beach. All right, Jeremy. Hey, he asked about queens. Are we selling any? Not right now, because we have hundreds of nucleus colonies that we are prepping for. That's what this is right here. We're building these Jester Nuke boxes, and we'll do a short video on those, on how to assemble them. Just a really short video. They're a little bit of a pain if you don't know how, but I've got to make sure that we get good queens in our nucleus colonies. So that's the primary thing. And as far as after that, which would be, after mid-May, Laurel and I have been talking about this a lot, but I'm not sure if I'm going to stay doing bees or if we're going to just sell extra nukes and then go back to working the job. Last year, I stressed ourselves out way too much, and we just have not really had a whole lot of a break. Even this winter, I was hoping it would be. It has not, and I want to be. We've got some. I've got some health issues as well that's related to stress. Everyone's telling me to slow down, including my doctor, and I'm not very good at listening to anybody except Laurel. Anyways, yeah, that's right. And so I'm going to try to. I'm still trying to figure out what I need to do this year. I might sell a few hundred queens, but I might not sell any after May. That's what I'm getting to. All right. -20 today in Canada, Ray. Oh my goodness. Please keep that up there. We're done with winter. I don't know if we even got down in the single digits this year. It was pretty mild. Anyways, let's get to some queen rearing stuff and then we'll get to some questions and answers. So I think many of you have probably watched our queen rearing series. And by the way, if you don't know, check out our playlists. If you go to our main page and the playlist, it has things a little bit more organized where you can find maybe the subjects that you're wanting. But when it comes to queen rearing, especially for those of you who just have a handful of hives or even, 20 or so, we just need a 5-frame nuke for. We don't need any big fancy setups. I'm going to try to do some videos on the bigger setups this year if I get a chance. But there's other videos out there, and what I mean by that is like a 10-frame double deep. You can produce hundreds of cells if you keep supplying the colony with young bees through capped brood. What I'm really wanting to focus on this year more is just helping people raise their own queens, because I think this is one of the biggest issues that we have in this country and maybe around the world, is that we're getting all of these commercial queens, and some of them I've had are halfway decent, and a lot of them are terrible. We need to be able to take control of our genetics, stuff that is working. Obviously, if you've been keeping bees for a while, you've had those colonies that have just been awesome. And wouldn't it be nice if you could get a bunch of daughters from that queen and then have that throughout your bee yard? And whether you have 3 hives, 5 hives, 10 hives, 20 hives, whatever, it's really nice once you start being able to raise your own queens. And it's really not that hard once you get the ropes and you learn the basics. Then you're going to be able to save yourselves a lot of money and get more out of your colonies. I really believe that. That has worked really well for me. I have more and more, I'm relying on other people to do things for me because we're running out of time. I just ordered 3,000 deep frames with foundation inserted, assembled, and all that stuff. And I've been doing a lot more things like that, getting people to do work for me because time is important. But if there's one thing that that I don't want to let other people do for me, is raise my own queen. So, last year we were doing 5, frame nuke boxes in these Jester Easy nuke boxes, and it worked super well. However, if you're wanting to build your own, in the video where I made the 5-frame nuke, what I would do is just have a screen on the bottom. You can always close it up, have a way to close it up. But when you are raising queens, you need to pack the bees in there, and that's one of the most important things that you need is good young bee population. All those young bees, they produce the royal jelly. You've got to have a large population. I want the big cells, the most copiously fed cells possible. And so what I'm going to do to make these up is I'm going to put a frame of food on the edges. So that's going to be 2 frames here. And I'm going to put 2 frames of capped brood if I have them. You don't have to have any brood, honestly. If you just shake a bunch of nurse bees in there and pack it and pack it and pack it, I mean, basically to the point where you can hardly get the lid on. And as long as they're queenless and the only larvae that you have is what you've grafted or however you've put it in there, that is going to work really well. And one of the methods I hope to have time for this year is basically just taking a foundationless frame and I don't even have a deep frame in here, do I? Doggone it. Shame on me. But basically, you have your deep frame, right? Just a big rectangle. You have a foundationless frame, and you're going to stick that in the colony that you want to raise your queens from. Usually, 3 to 5 days before you want them. And there's just stick them down in there. That's where Excluder comes handy. You can keep the queen down there amongst that. Or you can just have, if you have all foundationless, it's much easier. And this is one of the advantages of foundationless. There's some negatives to foundationless, but there are some positives. And one of the nice thing is that you can easily cut through that because you don't have plastic or wired beeswax foundation. And what I'm getting at is you can cut it where there's eggs or where there's young larvae of the right age. And you can just stick that in a queenless 5-frame nuke, and they are going to raise tons of queen cells off of that. And then you can just cut them out with a knife. There's videos out there on this. There's old bee books out there on this. I prefer grafting. Anybody can do it, unless you have really bad hands that are shaking really hard. And you can't control it, then you can graft. It's just a matter of practice, and practice long before you actually are wanting to get queens. If you're wanting them in May, start grafting in April. Get into your colony during an inspection. Take out a frame of drone larvae even. Work on picking them up. Takes a little bit of time. But I prefer grafting. It's much easier. We've got videos on that. The Chinese grafting tool works really good. But again, the number one problem that people have with raising queens in any setup, whether it's a 5-frame nuke or larger, is having too low of a bee population. Many times that is a problem. I guess I would think that the number 2 problem would be you've accidentally put other brood in there that's like larva age, and since there's a bunch of larvae in there, they'll sometimes raise queens off of those instead of your grafts, and so that can be an issue. Bee density, though, only providing the larvae in your cells. And then the other thing would be nutrition. Now, keep in mind, if you make this thing up and it's full, even if it's got the densest bee population, you only give them the grafts, there's another problem. Now, of course, we've provided them with food resources. I suggest if you're planning on doing this, you also save back a good frame of bee bread or two, because even though we do feed some pollen patties, it's great to have a frame of bee bread that you can stick in your freezer, pull from one of your strong hives, stick it in your freezer, and then you can let that thaw for a day and then stick that when you're making up your queens. And I always want to have a frame of bee bread right up against the graft frame. So the graft, I usually stick in the middle, bee bread, and then I told you wrong earlier. So the graft, bee bread, then honey, and then brood, capped brood. You can have 2 in there, but one's fine. And then you can have honey on the other side. There's a couple different ways you can do it, but you're going to have to eventually add capped brood to make these things last for long periods of time if you're wanting to keep grafting for weeks. So you got to have plenty of food reserves. But even if you have the food reserves in here, if you've got all the bees, you got only your grafts in there, no other larvae available, you still have the problem of you don't have hardly any forager bees, because all of the flying bees, once you open this up, unless you move them to a whole new location, then they are going to be flying back to the original location, which is kind of fine because they aren't producing royal jelly for the queens. But you're not going to have any incoming resources. And when there's no incoming resources, even if they have a lot of food, they are going to hold back to a degree on feeding those queens, because they're like, okay, well, there's nothing incoming. Yeah, we have enough over here on the sides, but this is where you can feed your own honey on top. I find it's better diluted down a little bit. Usually 2 parts honey, 1 part water. That's usually what I do. Get the water just a little warm and mix it in. You don't have to do that. You can do straight honey. I just usually do it like that. We just use our own honey. We're going to be gathering pollens this year to be mixing in our pollen patties and feeding that as well. We need them feeling like, oh my goodness, we got nutrition here. We've got all this food that's coming into the hive. There's no reason not to take care of these things. And what we're trying to do is mimic the swarming impulse to a degree. They're not going to swarm. Definitely not in this condition, but swarming conditions typically happen when there is just tons of natural resources coming in. It happens during our season that, you've got tons of pollen, tons of nectar, and it's prime time. And obviously that's the best time for the bees to swarm because they can go out and draw comb, and they can make queens at a good, with plenty of resources to make healthy ones. And you have a lot of drones. So obviously, if we're wanting to have the best queens, we've got to mimic what nature is doing. So um, now there was one other thing I was going to say, doggone. Let's see here. Now, there's a lot of talk about starters and finishers. Typically, if you're just needing a handful of queens, then you only need this as a starter finisher. It'll work for it. And what I mean by that, for those of you who don't know, there's a couple different ways to raise queens. A lot of people use starter finishers, and what this would be considered a starter box. It's a queenless hive, oftentimes. You put your grafts in there. Within 24 hours, you will be able to see what's accepted, and then you can pull those grafts out, place a new set of grafts in, and then take those grafts that have been started, stick them in a colony that is called a finisher. And typically what it is you're going to have a very large, strong hive. And this is what we did last year and we've been doing for a few years now. And you have a deep box, that's what I use on the bottom, a queen excluder. You're going to have a deep box on top of that. That's going to have all kinds of resources. And what you're going to do is always make sure that queen's in laying room down below. And then the grafts go above, obviously where she can't get to them. They will continue to draw those out as long as they have plenty of nutrition. So this colony also has to have plenty of nutrition. You've got to either be feeding it or it's got to be during the prime time of the year where the bees have plenty of nutrition. And that double deep needs to be packed. We also bring up larvae. We'll have the 10 frame box on the second story. We'll stick the grafts in the center. We'll have a frame of bee bread up against that as well. And then we'll have a frame of young larvae over here. And that's to bring up nurse bees to that area. We want to really concentrate the nurse bees up top. So a lot of times I bring a lot of the larvae up top. And occasionally when you're going through the boxes, you'll want to look and make sure they're not, if you're feeding them and there's a lot of honey coming in and pollen, this colony might want to swarm. So periodically you go through and you've got to check for swarm cells in there. But doing this, you can raise, a lot of queens. Some guys with these systems will have as many as 90 in there at a time. I don't like doing that. I think that's too many. Personally, I prefer to doing more around 45 to 50, which I feel like still gives me good queen quality. The cells still look large. And even off of that, there's always, a small percentage that if they're a little runty, I don't use runty cells. They usually give me problems. I don't want anything like that. So there's multiple ways to do it. But, just for your backyard, all you need is this one for a starter finisher. The whole setup, you just put the grafts in there. The day that you put them in, you've got to pull them out on day 10. Now, you can pull them out on day 9. I usually pull them out on day 10 because if you wait a little bit longer than that, then they might start hatching out, and then it's going to go around and zap all your other cells, and then you only end up with one queen, and then it's running around in your box here. So you've got on day 10, you've got to pull them out, and you've got to already have splits ready. And then you can just drop cells in. Cells do very well for me. And I'm going to be tinkering around with more cells this year instead of, having personal mating nukes, raising my own mated queens, and then introducing mated queens. I'm going to be using more cells this year and just going to colonies that have an old queen, maybe an underperforming queen, and make a split. If she's a good queen, I'll make a small split with her. Maybe, just like in a white jester nuke box is what I did last year, is I'd stick the old queen with a couple frames of bees up on top of my hive. And then they can, just be like a little nuke. And then I can put the queen cell down in the hive she came from. And if that cell does not come back from mating, doesn't give me a good queen within, 10 to 14 days, then I'm going to introduce that old queen back in. And that way I haven't taken a large hive of mine and made it, given it into a critical situation. So it's just one of the things we do. There's insurance policies, insurance. But anyways, who's got questions on queen rearing? I could talk more about it, but I'm just running my mouth like I do in the videos. Yeah, I actually am going to be cutting this chat a little bit shorter. I've got to get up like at 5 o'clock, I think, in the morning. So I'll probably be cutting this one off at 9 instead of our 3 hour marathons. That was never the intention. But I do love talking bees, and you all are pretty awesome. Many of you guys have become my friends, either online or even a few of you in person that I've got to meet. And so, this to me, this is important, and I hope that I can help a little bit. Beekeeping has been very frustrating for me a lot of times. It's been also one of my favorite things in the world, but I feel like it's been made many times more frustrating because I didn't source the information right. And I definitely don't have all the information, but I'm hoping that I can maybe contribute to some of the good information that's out there. All right. So people are asking about the Nikon methods. And then I'm going to get to the royal jelly stuff. Ever try Nikon? No, I have not. I have used a couple of their system, like with the hair roller cages. I've used that part of it because it's handy. Because if the virgins come out and they're still separated from one another. However, I just prefer doing the grafting method myself. I just once you get the hang of grafting, it's so fast. It's so easy. Um, and you really have to, with the Nikon system. If I remember correctly, you have to get the queen to lay in those cups, and so there's a lot of effort and timing that goes into that. I feel like with that same effort, especially since now I know how to graft, it'd be just as quick for me. However, I do like the idea of having those hair roller cages, so I have some of those. If we're ever going to be gone, and I know ahead of time, I will graft into my Nikon system that I don't actually, do the whole Nikon thing, but I graft into them, and I can still use those hair roller cages. So when the virgins hatch out, I'm not losing all my queens. Um, Now, as far as the royal jelly, okay, so someone was asking, at what temperature can you start raising queens? You can raise queens in the 60s. I mean, that if this thing's packed full of bees, especially if it was getting cold, like down into the 30s and stuff like that, of a nighttime, I would wrap a blanket around this or something to insulate it. But we're my buddy down in Memphis, he's raising queens, and we're still dropping down in the upper 30s and stuff like that. And he showed me his graphs, and for first round graphs, they look good. There's several good cells in there. Someone was asking about royal jelly and how to get that. Now, I showed in one of my videos how we did it. So this is, this is a great way. I almost forgot about this. So let's say you set this up. It's packed full of bees, but you haven't introduced your graphs. The day that you set it up, it's not a bad idea to stick, instead of the graft frame in the middle frame, you stick a frame of young larvae in the middle. And this is important because if there's no queen in here, which there should not be, they are going to start raising queens within hours. Some people argue even faster than that. And so they're going to start raising queens off of the larvae that's in that frame. And this is a good thing for two reasons. Number one, if you wait 24 to 48 hours, you're going to have several cells that they're drawing that they're going to pack full of royal jelly. You can scoop this out and dip it into your JZBZ cups or whatever wax cups or whatever type of grafting cups you're going to be using. Hey, Laurel, hand me those grafting bars down there. And I think I might have gotten some of cups in that yellow bag for grafting. But anyways, so you can use that royal jelly like that. And also, so you can buy these, you can make your own wooden ones. These just save me a lot of time because I can take the JZBZ cups and pop them right in, 15 to a bar. So you graft into these, you can dab that royal jelly down in there. And this also does another thing. I have found that I get better grafts on my first round if I do that. I really don't do it for the royal jelly. I do it to get the bees in the mode of making royal jelly and producing it. Because when you put your grafts in there, as soon as you make this up, they're a little stressed out, obviously, from being put into a new box and, oh, our queen's gone and stuff like that. They're not really organized right immediately. They get on the ball real quick. But is there not any cups in there? All right, don't worry about it then. You can watch the video, see the JZBZ cups. But so the royal jelly that they're producing on the larvae on the frame can be used for your JZBZ cups or whatever system you're using, which makes it a lot easier to graft, because when you have that dab of royal jelly down in there, as you drop the larvae in, it's a lot easier to do it and not damage the larvae. And also it kind of is, well, it's a little sticky. So when the larvae touches it, it just comes right off the Chinese grafting tool or German grafting tool. So it's very handy in that regard. But again, I think it's worthwhile just because if you give them that 24 hours at least to work on those that are already making royal jelly, you get in there, just smoke just a tiny bit of smoke, pull out that frame of larvae, give it, use your royal jelly up. Make sure when you give it back to another colony, a hive, all that larvae, that you don't leave those cells partially developed, because sometimes they'll continue making them out, and then you'll have a virgin that'll go around and a lot of times sting your queen. And then you're out of that good queen. So make sure that you crush those if you don't need them, or use them for the royal jelly. But then now when we stick our grafts in after we've done that, the bees are ready and they make better queens that way. They seem to take to them and they do a better job. Now, whenever you pull your grafts out and you stick another one in, usually they're already in that mode. Once you've done your first round, usually it's just a matter of keeping the young bees stocked in there periodically, and you're good. Hey, Dave Nestle. Hey, Will Bingham. Thanks. I hope I didn't butcher your name, but thanks so much for coming on and helping support the channel. Yeah. So backyard bees is asking, where do I get the jelly? So again, if we stick that frame, as soon as we make this box up full of bees, whatever, if it's a 10 frame, 5 frame, doesn't matter. It's queenless, strong, lots of bees. We stick a frame of larvae in there, and they are going to start. A frame's not a grafting frame, a normal frame. And it's going to have larvae all across it that you specifically put in there. And then you are going to, within 24 to 48 hours, there's going to be a lot in there. You're going to be able to go in there and see where they're making emergency queen cells. And you're going to be able to get all of that wonderful royal jelly for your grafts. But then again, it's nice just to kind of start it that way. Hi-Fi asked, have I looked into on-the-spot queen rating yet? I have not. Yeah, guys, don't forget to hit that like button. Thanks for the reminder. Okay, so Mike O'Brien asked a good question. Could you still royal jelly from young drone brood to help with grafting? You possibly could. Some people's like, whoa, there's a difference, because there is. There is a difference between queen royal jelly and worker and drone royal jelly. And so some people will be like, even just a little bit of that is going to be bad. And that could be right. But then again, I know some people that literally prime with yogurt, which is crazy. And they say that works fairly decent. I've never tried it, not going to. I'm sure that it would work. However, what's probably going to happen, this is what I've heard, is even when you prime with royal jelly, a lot of times the nurse bees suck that up and then they deposit fresh stuff. So is it good to use jelly from something else? Maybe, but it's pretty easy to make stuff that's specifically made for the queen, because there is a big difference between worker and drone jelly and queen jelly. So I err on the side of caution and all that kind of stuff. Hey, Roy, thanks for coming on again. Thanks so much, guys. Thank you. It just means a lot. And I like to take this time as well to say, there are so many people that have really helped us. I wasn't even sure, this time a year ago that I was legitimately thinking of stopping the channel, because I think at this point we had 300 or 400 subs, maybe 400. No, we had 500 on April 9th. That's right. So we have grown quickly, and it's due to a large part to you guys and gals, because you all have told your bee buddies at your clubs, and some of you have I've seen you repost on Facebook and other places like that, and in many other ways that you all have helped us out and encouraged us just with kind words and thumbs up. That means a lot. Yeah, yeah, and but the Laurel's like the donations are really helpful, and they are, because we're gonna be able to do so much more, and we're in a hard transition point right now, and I want to be able to do everything, but also have to realize that Rome wasn't built in a day. Um, let's see. And when thanks to our Patreons, by the way, some people found the Patreon thing that we haven't even set up fully, and
There's like no options on there yet.
yeah, and it's like there's people found that out without us even advertising it or supporting us. So thanks everybody in all your different ways, especially the folks who've just come on here. I mean, this is just so encouraging. All right, so can you buy man-made royal jelly substitute? I have never heard of a substitute, Don, but I do know commercial beekeepers who purchase royal jelly for priming the cells. I have never purchased royal jelly. It's very expensive. Some beekeepers think that it's worth it, and some of them dilute it down with distilled water. I think it's a 50-50 ratio. I'm pretty darn sure. However, I dry graft, and that's one thing I was going to get into. Is I don't prime my cells anymore. I used to, but it takes a lot of extra time. And if you get the hang of grafting, I'm having to back myself up again. If the hive that you're grafting from also has to be taken care of. There is a big difference in young larvae that you graft from that are fed copiously and ones that are not. And it is very hard to graft larvae. And I think this is where a lot of people have problems, is that they're grafting from larvae that aren't being fed good. When that larvae is floating in a pool of jelly, it's so much easier to graft, especially with the Chinese grafting tool. Same with the German grafting tool as well, though. When you have that royal jelly down in there, it's easier not to damage them. It's easier to pick them up. And that's only going to come from larvae that have been fed good, and that comes from a hive that has a lot of nutrition. So if you're in a dearth period in summer and you're still wanting to graft some cells, you're going to have to feed that colony. You're going to have to, or the larvae aren't going to be as easy to graft, but they're going to need to be fed healthy. They're going to have to be transported over. But I dry graft, and once you get the hang of grafting, as long as the larvae have a little bit of jelly down in there, you can just scoop them up, drop them down, and there's usually enough royal jelly surrounding them that you don't even hardly touch. You might not even touch the larvae, but that only comes from healthy fed colonies. Let's see here. Have you always been able to talk nonstop like you do on your videos? You are great and gifted. Oh, well, thank you. So when it comes to the talking ability, which I have a lot to learn, Laurel gets annoyed because I study my videos several times and I'm usually not very happy. But I got to give my parents a lot of credit. They forced me to do a lot of things as a young man that, just young people typically wouldn't do on their own. And I've always been a little bit more prone to being more social. My brothers are not. I mean, they can, hang out and all that kind of stuff, but they're not, they don't have the gift of gab like I do. What are you smirking about over there? You could get a little bit more gift of gab yourself. If we could just meet like halfway, it'd be about just right. My voice has got me in a lot of trouble over the years. However, my dad and mom always encouraged us and made us do a lot of stuff in school, plays, and stuff like that. And I don't know. I had a lot of problems with my voice and talking back and putting my foot in my mouth several times in crowds, and I still do. But thankfully, for once, it's actually doing something good. Hey, thanks so much for sharing us on your Facebook page. I saw that. Hey, B Lord, I wasn't sure if you're going to make it tonight. All right. So Bill Green was asked, are we going to start the Facebook channel again? And we might further down the road. I really want to. I think it would be excellent. Oh, Facebook group. And I think it was headed to be maybe one of the better Facebook groups because it was going to be really focused on helping people on an individual basis, and it was geared to be fairly heavily moderated, which Facebook has to be, and pretty much internet thing has to be. I am so swamped right now. I don't know how I'm going to get all the work I'm going to get done between now and May. Um, it's just crazy. Yeah, and it was getting to the point where we are going to have to get moderators and probably pay people and all that kind of stuff. So, anyways, no, not for now, anyways. But we're hoping to have some things. Let's see here. So, how many hives do you feel are the most one bee yard can typically handle? So, I have some good bee yards and bad bee yards, and this one here at my house, I think I had too many bees here. This bee yard has the smallest cluster size, and I think it's because there was too many bees here, and it has poor nutrition. And I think that's also because there's some beekeepers in this area, so the bees have more competition. And I had too many. I am not sure what the sweet spot is yet. I'm still tinkering with that. A lot depends on your bee yard. A lot depends on your season and your area, and it's really hard to nail that down. But it would be better to err on the side of too little than too many. And honestly, I'm thinking 40. I'm thinking here is max. I have several bee yards that have more than that. And I need to work on that. 30 would probably be better, but then you run into the problem of when you're going out to pull honey supers or when you're going to feed bees or make splits, then that's more bee yards you have to visit and things like that. So finding the balance when you start doing it as a profession or trying to work towards that, it takes some of the fun stuff out of beekeeping. It really does. And that's why you want to think twice about that. Think this channel is making it a lot more fun for me, for sure. Sharon Lane says Laurel has the gift of giggling. Amen. She sure does. All right. Hey, Landon Nelson. So, how much extra do I need to pay to get you to send some queens to Utah? I don't have. I'm not going to have any queens till all my new customers are taken care of, and I might not have any after that. So, John Tanner, do you have any other jobs besides bees? Well, we homeschool our kids, and I work. I spend 50 hours right now, up until this week. I've spent 50 hours a week this winter, working at a job 3 days a week, packing those hours in, and the other 4 days trying to get ready for everything. And we're behind. Well, we always are behind this time of the year. I don't know any beekeepers that are ever ahead. It's just part of the farming game, I guess. Bee farm, all that stuff. But yeah, we work around here. Wayne Watson, do you feed starter hives Pro Sweet and do you thin it any? There's a lot of debate on that. I have been feeding Pro Sweet straight. Now this year I have switched a little bit just because I've had cheaper stuff that I've been able to source, but I've been feeding it straight. Some people say adding a little bit of water to it helps stimulate them more. I do know that makes it spoil, also creates more work for me to do. I don't know. And I know there's been some tests out there that have kind of proved that it's pretty close in the similarities between watered down and what's not. I just feed it straight. And this year I'm using, because I know somebody's going to ask, is and I'm going to be using a medium invert sugar, and that is basically just cane sugar that is thickened, just like kind of like what we did on the stove, except that, a commercial company did it, and it's much better as far as they got a much better and bigger system. Can you give me something to drink? And medium invert means that it's only partially inverted. And I don't know, there's a little variables there. I think this one is 60% inverted. So originally, if you mix sugar and water, you got basically sucrose. But then if you start inverting it, you start getting fructose and glucose. And this is a mixture mostly of sucrose, fructose, and glucose. But it's all off of cane sugar, which I like because it's non-GMO, and I was able to get a good price on it. Let's see. Yeah, 1-to-1 spoils really fast, and if you're able to make it thicker pretty easily, it's nice to make it thicker. I will say though, bees don't want to rob the thick stuff near as much. Now, 2-to-1, they still rob it pretty good, and they'll still go after syrup for sure. But visually, I've been able to see a big difference in them going after Pro Sweet and this invert syrup. And the reason I think for that is because it's so thick. I just maybe that's why some people argue that thinning it down stimulates the bees a little bit more, is because I don't know, maybe bees treat it a little bit differently. We need to learn more about that. But also, there's the time of the beekeeper as well. Let's see. Do you make your own pollen sub or purchase Ultra Bee? I totally purchase Ultra Bee. I don't have the time, and the Ultra Bee works really well for me. And if you buy it in bulk, you can get it very cheap. And if you look at these sales that occasionally Man Lake and Kelly's have going on, there was one earlier. If you guys go to my Facebook page, if you do Facebook and you follow me, every time I see a good deal on certain things like that, a lot of times I post it on there. Kelly's and Man Lake still have a little bit of sell. You know what? Some of their stuff is, not really that good of a sell. There's always a few items that are actually pretty decent, and then there's some items that you can source cheaper elsewhere. And that's the way that we are. There are Man Lake and all those companies, they have their uses. They also have cheaper Nuke boxes than this, but by the time you go through all the little materials on hundreds of them and put all the screens in and staple them together and all that stuff, it's not worth the savings. So, there's it's a good thing. We need these big businesses to supply certain things, but definitely source stuff. And if you have the skills and the tools, build stuff. I love building things. That's one of the kind of the disappointing things about doing this as a business is I can no longer afford the time to build everything myself. It's kind of a bummer. On your heavy syrup you make, can I add some of my fall honey to that, or will it cause robbing more so? If you add honey to it, do it after the syrup is cooled down mostly, because you don't want to damage any of the natural stuff in the honey. Only feed your honey sherry, but you could do that. It might actually make them want to rob it a little bit more because it's going to have that natural flora smell to it. And that's one of the reasons why cane sugar is one of the best feeds, is one, because it doesn't have the mineral roughage, but also because it doesn't have a whole lot of smell to it. Uh, uh, Someone asked above about bee weaver queens and what I thought about them. Um, they might be the world's greatest queens, but I've never let them live long enough to be able to figure that out because they are so mean. I hate. It's one thing that everyone has a bad day in the bee yard. This weather we've been having, it was cloudy all day today, going to be like that tomorrow, raining halfway through the day. Bees don't like it. But when it's a beautiful sunshiny day, the bees are bringing in pounds and pounds of honey and pollen. The bees should be happy, and they're coming at you in attack formation, and not ones and twos, you know, 20s and 30s. I said no more on the bee weavers. Some people really like them though, but I'm not a glutton for punishment. Hey, Gary B, thanks so much for coming on and supporting us out and all that kind of stuff. What are your thoughts on Monsanto developing a queenless bee? A queenless bee. If you're talking about the robot bee, um, I don't know anything about queenless bees. Let's see. Someone was asking about the syrup, I believe it was. You can invert syrup by adding lemon juice. Yeah, you totally can. Would you discuss the setup of mating nukes? Okay, Eric Dunn asked this question. It's a great question. So there is, just like with all things beekeeping, there are dozens of ways to do this. And if you look across the world, even more, it is insane. It's kind of cool though. And we all have to figure out what works best for our system. Richard Noel has a YouTube channel and he has a totally different system than what I use. And I think it's neat. They have different equipment over there, but primarily what I want resources. I don't like waste. The little mini nukes, I have some and I've used them. They can be used right, but they're so delicate. If they're too packed, they swarm. If there's not enough bees, they can't defend themselves, and it's very easy to get to that point. If the queen lays too heavily and builds it up, and you don't pull enough brood out of there, then they're going to swarm. And they're so small, and you have to do it just right to keep them locked in. I like using deep frames, but medium frames work really good. I really want to have some decent coverage, and there's another reason why I don't like the mini nukes as well. This is the number one, is the fact that I can't tell how good the queen is laying in those little, chiclet sized frames. And I've got a bunch of those things, so I still use them. Like last year, those are what I typically raise my queens in during the summer and stuff like that. But I hate losing the resources. I'm eventually going to cycle them out. One of my buddies is thinking about buying them off of me, so I might sell some to him. But anyways, I want frames that I can use. If I'm thinking 1.5 to 2 frames of bees is a good size. I really like 2 frames because, especially if there's 2 frames of coverage, that queen can go in there and start laying. I can see a good pattern. Also, whenever I pull that queen out, there's a lot of bees in there. I want to have plenty of space. That's why I have the 3-frame system. So if I have 2 frames I put in there, then they have growing room. You're still going to eventually have to pull some bees out of there, or they'll get too big on the healthy ones. But let's say you're done with the season. You have frames of either mediums or deeps now that are usable. This is why I don't really like the 2-frame system. That's been very popular, and it works, but it's very limited. That box is totally limited towards just mating queens. Thank you. Thank you. And how about one of those like pear things? Oh, well, yeah, I want yours. Oh, so and this, hey, B Lord, he's from Polish. Hello, Poland. So, one thing I wanted to mention, and this is where we have to be careful. Facebook, you can get anything. You can get anything on YouTube too. There was a guy bragging that for the last 20 years, he's never lost a hive. All of his hives produce insane amounts of honey, and that he's never had to treat for anything, never had to worry about anything. His bees are just that awesome. He's in Virginia too. So maybe some of you guys are nearby so you can get some of those awesome genetics. And I'm not saying if you're a treatment-free guy that you fall into this craziness, because there are a lot of treatment-free folks out there who are actually trying to monitor their colonies and do the best by their bees. And I have a lot of respect for some treatment-free beekeepers, but this is the time that guy is irrational. There has never been in any time in history where the bees did that good. Nature is too brutal. Even if there was no varroa mites, no small hive beetles, none of these things, there's still queen problems you can have. There's nutrition. Some years are not the same. Some years it's easy to keep bees. Some years it's a little bit more difficult. And if we don't recognize the issues before they happen, then we can end up with dead colonies or weak colonies because we didn't supplement their feed because there was no fall flow. It happens. Back in 2000 and, oh goodness, was it 10, 11, something like that, we had an insane freeze. Our tulip poplar trees, all of our deciduous trees were completely leafed out. We had not a frost, we had a freeze. It looked like someone took a blowtorch to the countryside. Everything turned brown. What do you think happened to all the flowers? There were none. It's a bad year for beekeepers. And that doesn't happen very often. But those things do happen. And people that just say, "Oh man, it's so easy." These people that are, just wasting their time taking care of their bees, please don't listen to them. Beekeeping is not unlike anything else in your life. There's work to be done. And you just can't snap your fingers and magically just have stuff happen for you. I wish it was that easy, but then if it was, honey would not be precious and bees would not be precious because everybody could do it. All right. Sugar is a chemical, and I'm eating some delicious chemicals right now. This is some chia seeds and pears. Woo! Little late dinner. Deciduous. Did I say that? Wait a minute. Is someone named deciduous foliage on here, or did he type that? That's his name or her name. Wow, that was interesting. All right. Yeah, some folks don't have them. Australia folks don't have them, Varroa. They are very fortunate. I hope they never get it. Any experience in the two-frame deep mating nuke? Yes, I have actually got a little experience with that. I think I've pulled, I don't know, 150 queens or so out of those. So what my buddy does in Hawaii, for those of you who don't know, I've got a video on it. It's way back, and it's a March. No, maybe the first week of March this time last year. If you look at my videos, but it shows you how he does everything. It's really a worthwhile short video. Anyways, he has a 5-frame nuke with a divider down the middle of it. So 3 on one side, 2 on the other. So it's a 2-frame on that side. But the advantage is you pull that divider and you can overwinter a 5-frame nuke in it. That's the main thing I don't like about the 2-frame system is for me, it's limited to mating nukes. Now, it is nice, though, that if you're using deep frames, you can still move them over to your other colonies at the end of the season. You can still use those frames, unlike the mini mating nuke systems. But I do like, I mean, it really doesn't take that much more wood. You've already got the long pieces. It's just the front little short pieces. If you were just to make them a little bit wider, a little bit more lid and bottom, a little bit more work. It doesn't really take much longer. And then you're going to have a 5-frame nuke that you can overwinter. And Michael Palmer overwinters 4-frame nukes, put up together and wrapped in northern Vermont. So, I mean, if he can do them up there, you can do them in most parts of the world. Hey, Clueless Beekeeping. He's not the guy with the auto oxalic acid sprayer. Zach is not that cool. Hey, Zach, if you're watching this, you kind of deserve it. Can a lack of pollen cause winter dead out? Oh, yeah. I mean, we have not had this hasn't been the worst. This is we're doing good, but we could have done better if the fall pollens were better here. It impacts cluster size going into winter. We can feed pollen patties to try to make up for it, and it does help, but nothing replaces real pollens. And while the pollen patties helps, if this is 100%, the pollen patties are probably going to, get you somewhere around, this area. But if you're not feeding anything, then, it drops down significantly. And nutrition, even if you've taken care of the varroa mites, nutrition is so critical. It's often overlooked, and they really go hand in hand because the varroa are feeding on the nutrition of the bees. So if you have a lot of varroa and poor nutrition, it's a recipe for disaster. It's a terrible recipe for disaster. If you have a lot of varroa going through your winter as well, they're going to be feeding on the nutrition of the bees. And it's the fat bees that go into winter that actually, they're the ones that actually make it through winter. It's not just any old bee. If they're not young and don't have that healthy fat, they're not going to make it through winter. And that's where you see these big colonies like, oh man, this is a 10-frame hive going in winter. Yeehaw. It's November. You come out in March and there's like 2 frames of bees in there. What in the world? Let's see. Ways to strengthen in a weak overwintered nuke in the spring. Well, as long as I don't like helping out a wimpy colony as far as if they're sickly or anything, but if they're healthy and they're trying to grow, but they just need a boost, giving them capped brood and a couple shakes of nurse bees if you can afford it from another colony, is the best thing that you can do. You can reduce the space a little bit as well. Follower boards are a great cheap tool that you can make yourself. It's just like my TDNs, my tennis temporary double nucleus. You can just have a wooden 3/4 inch board or whatever, and just slide it right up against the. You can have a 10 frame hive, and you can reduce it down to however many frames they are, and then just kind of shrink the airspace and help them out a little bit. So Hi-Fi is asking, is it okay to boost a weak hive this time of the year with brood from another hive? I'll tell you, this time last year, I'd already made some splits. My buddy from Hawaii sent me 5 queens back with me, and I made splits in 30-degree weather, March 1st. And I gave them plenty. I only gave them 1 frame of brood, a frame of honey, another frame of honey / pollen, and I shook in about, all the adhering bees on those frames. I shook in about another frame or 2 of bees from some of my really robust colonies. They all did well. It's all about having nutrition available and having plenty of bee coverage to warm the cluster. But yeah, as long as your area is warm enough. I mean, if you're like Ray up in Canada and you're getting -20s, not a good idea. Yes, Brent's like with mated queens, and that's exactly right. They were mated queens. They were mated in Hawaii. And surprisingly, they weren't lazy bums that were just wanting to sit on the beach all day in sun. That's why I told Zach, I'm like, they'll probably just want to lounge around. But actually, they did pretty well. When should I start walkaway splits? Western Kentucky here. I mean, I would wait a little bit. I wouldn't push it. Usually early April is good here in Tennessee. I'm northern Tennessee. I would prefer to wait a little bit. We've had a lot of really bad thunderstorms and stuff. I'll be really careful. Oh, is he? Oh, he is. Hey, Ian, what's up? And no, I am not making queens yet, but I am considering starting next week. I really don't need to. I was planning on doing it the last week of March, but I've got friends who are very close to me who are raising queens, and they're getting some very good looking cells. We have tons of drones. Have you set all your bees out yet, Ian? Oh man, we've had drones for like I've had drones in my big colonies for like 2 months. We have tons of drones, and at least in my bee yards. I don't know how many are out in the wild. So that's why I like to wait a little bit. Our weather we get a lot of thunderstorms. It's been cloudy all day, rain a little bit here, all that kind of stuff. Still cold up there, huh? Sounds like it. Well, I saw your video, Ian, on the Nozema and stuff like that, and I watched that one. I really enjoyed that. It's not easy work or oftentimes fun work, but it's really important. I think we as beekeepers have got to take a little bit more, put a little bit more effort. I know there's others out there who are doing it that I don't know, but I feel like a lot of times we let these scientists do everything. And we need to take more control ourselves. And Nozema is kind of one of those things that we don't talk about a whole lot down here, but we don't overwinter hardly. I mean, we didn't have. I don't think it got under 19 degrees. I'm not even sure if it got below 20 degrees Fahrenheit all year here. Very, very mild. Yeah, Ian. For those of you who don't know, Ian Stepler, the Canadian Beekeepers blog, has a channel. It's geared more towards professional beekeeping, but there's a lot of fundamentals that you can pick up in there for sure. Now, Laurel was actually watching one of Ian's videos the other day. Which one was that? Oh man, she was laughing. Girls like guys with accents. I don't understand that. What? Oh, you're listening on the phone in the other room? Oh, whoops. Oh, okay. Okay. She likes how you say winter shed. I do too. It's great. Oh boy. What? This is supposed to be Honest and open. Busted. That's right. All right. So, hey, Matthew asked, when do we put out swarm traps? And you need to get them up. We're already getting swarms here in Tennessee. And multiple swarms have been caught in Tennessee. I heard one in Virginia from a guy that I know, and several in Alabama and southern states. If you don't have your swarm traps up, you need to get them up, especially if you're in the South. Yeah, Ian doesn't really say A, does he? You got to work on that, Ian. It just doesn't feel very, Canadian of you. We have our stereotypes down here, and you're really, messing it up. Do you keep cell builders and mating nukes in the same yards? I don't. Now, well, I do some actually, but not all of them. For a second I thought you meant drone colonies. Now I want drone colonies out away from them. Some people disagree with that, but I like to have some, about 3 different drone yards around that are going to have several colonies, depending on how many queens that I'm raising. Have them about 3/4 of a mile, 1.5 miles, and then having them in multiple different directions and try to triangulate. Oh, yeah, it's too big of a word. Try to have them spread out all over the place. And in that way, our queens have a lot of different options. But yeah, you can totally have your cell builders and your mating nukes in the same yard. There's no problem with that. Especially if you're doing this, as a hobby, and you're just wanting to raise 5, 10, 20 queens. You don't even need to throw drone colonies out there most of the time, especially if you do this during your prime part of the season. There is more than likely going to be enough drones to service your queens. It's when you start raising dozens of queens at a time, that's when there's cause for concern on making sure that your queens are getting enough drones. And it really depends on the time of the year. If you're trying to do it during a time of the year when there's not a lot of drones naturally, then that's when things get complicated. But if you're just raising a handful of queens, no problem. So Burley B, what is your OAV treatment schedule? How many times? So in winter, I am going to treat at least twice back to back because we had brood in our biggest colonies every month this year. Now in December, it was at its lowest and there was very little, but on our biggest colonies, there was still probably at least half a frame of brood on both sides laid up. And some of them even more than that. So oxalic acid in the winter. Um, I don't. I do it a little bit, and after I make splits, like whenever I do a timed split to where I expose all of the Varroa mites, and I've explained that in videos and also on this before. It takes a while. I'm going to try to do another really in-depth video on that this year, but just making your splits in such a way that both the parent colony and the young colony are creating a time period where there is no capped brood, all the mites are exposed, and whether you're using oxalic acid vapor or Apivar or whatever, every treatment works better when the bees don't have capped broods and the mites are exposed. Patrick asked if I've tried heat treatments to control Varroa in summer. I have not, but I'm going to try to do that this year. How do you like the green frames for drones? I do like the green frames for drone production. They work very well, and it's very easy to know where your drone frames are. And you can also use them for Varroa control. It's very laborious, so I don't. But some people use those to harvest the drones when they're capped, and you can haul some mites out there with them. So Ian, what's your weather up there like in Canada right now? Are you guys fixing to thaw out anytime soon? We got pollen down here, but I mean, goodness, you're probably what, 2,000 miles higher than us? I need to look that up. Hey, Laurel, you gonna look that up? Maybe she will. I don't know if I'm on her Christmas card list right now.
North or higher?
Higher north, close enough. Hey, Saudi Daisy, I used to deliver semi trailers down in there. It's a neat little town. We are looking 3 weeks before putting bees out. Well, better late than never. That might not be late for you guys. He's in Manitoba area.
So it's huge, isn't it?
Just Google Manitoba. We don't need it. Hey, Ian, do you mind giving us your mailing address? Just put that out there. See how that works. We're looking. Okay, so by the way, we have a PO box. It is 332 Gainesboro, Tennessee, and 38562 is the zip code. And Gainesboro is spelled Gainesboro, Miami. Somebody had a sense of humor when they named that place Miami. Okay, so 1,391 miles. That is way north. Brr. But I do hate that we don't get any snow down here. All we get is tons of mud. Everything's just sloshing between my boots. So, what is your opinion about Formic Pro treatment in the spring in Dandridge, Tennessee? I don't like it. That's just me personally. I mean, you're going to kill mites with it, but this time of the year, your bees need to be brooding up. And Formic, in every situation that I've tried it, even using it in the temperature threshold that's recommended, always sets my colonies back. And if you're okay with that, then that's fine. But I would expect a certain degree of brood loss. That's one of the reasons why I don't recommend Formic. Some people use it, but typically the guys that I know that use it well are doing it at a natural brood break time of the year, or are making breaks in the brood cycle on purpose because they know they're going to lose brood anyways. I don't have a ton of experience, but what I do have has not been pleasant. Won't get pollen till mid to late April. Wow, we were getting pollen first week of February, I think. I blasted the heck out of my bees with Formic 70%. It did set them back, but man, it's worth dead mites. There you go. I mean, some people manage to do with it very well. I have not had good experience with it, but I haven't used the Formic Pro. I've used the Mite Away Quick Strips, and Formic Pro is supposed to be a little bit different, but I don't know. I don't use it. That's just, and I don't know everything. Ian knows this. By the way, Ian, thanks for helping me out with some of my questions about sucrose feed. I was able to get that nailed down, and I am in good shape. Let's see here. Do your bees where you are? Yeah, we don't have any Africanized bees around here. Thank goodness. Hello from Sydney. Yeah, seems to Bee Maid. Okay, yeah, Bee Maid's up there in Canada. Tomball, Texas. One of my friends, Jerome Bee Farm, lives in Colombia, and he keeps about 20 hives. He doesn't want to grow any bigger than that. He is extremely good, keeps meticulous records, monitors his varroa mite, treats primarily with formic acid, and does exceptionally well every year. But he's got a system. I don't fully understand it. He treats with formic in the fall, and I'm thinking the bees are already naturally kind of mostly broodless. I don't know all that he does, but I have seen the honey he's produced, and I have talked to him, and I've seen his graphs and charts, and he talks back and forth with Randy Oliver a little bit. I do know he uses the oxalic acid shop towels. He's actually he already applied some. Technically, I don't think they're legal. That's why I can't really promote those things. So I'm not recommending that you guys use them, but some people think they work really good. No, Columbia, as far as Columbia, Tennessee. Sorry. Yeah, Columbia, Tennessee. And Richard does a very good job with his bees. Yeah, and Randy, by the way, for those of you who don't know Randy Oliver, some people like him, some people don't. I like a lot of his stuff. There's been a couple of things he hasn't been right about. But overall, his information is, I think, a very good thing for beekeepers. And he's a very controversial person, I guess. I've heard a lot of controversy lately, but I think he's doing a lot of good stuff. One of the things he's working on is oxalic acid in shop towels in a glycerin, kind of like matrix, whatever. And as the bees are rubbing the shop towel, it is spreading the oxalic acid onto the mites. Now, I really like this system. One, because oxalic acid vapor is a very short term kill, where when it's on this shop towel, it can kill for many weeks and even a month or so, which covers the brood cycle. And it's not going to be a cure all, but if it's another tool that we have that's available to us, that could be really helpful. Cayman, can you discuss single brood versus double brood? Okay, so I was one of those guys who said double brood chambers. That's why I've been doing it for years. And Gus was one of the guys on here who encouraged me to start using queen excluders and think about doing singles. And also, Ian, watching him do some of his videos, encouraged me to start tinkering around with a little bit more. So now I'm planning on doing everything single hive management. I did most of them last year and compared them. I did the year before as well. And yeah, everything's going to be with an excluder, single hive. I have not noticed. Okay. I have not noticed any increase in swarming. You have to manage the bees the same way. You got to make sure that there's a lot of space above for the bees to move that nectar into. I think that's the biggest problem with new beekeepers that don't have a lot of excess comb is that, okay, so we draw out our first box, then we put our excluder and we stick our foundation up here. And that's going to be a problem because they're going to clog that down there. But when you have extra drawn combs, single brood management works really good. And I don't know everything about it. I'm still figuring out the ropes, but basically what I do is kind of like, I think what Ian showed us in some of his videos is that we kind of, there's always those counties that are a little too far ahead. And then there's some that are just a little behind and some that are occasionally that are just right, and then the ones that are too big, we're going to pull from them, keeping them from getting too big too early. And then I'm going to pull bees from that colony, either make a split or boost up a colony. And then I'm going to add lots of honey supers above, and that's going to give them a lot of room to move the nectar into. But I love the single brood hive management system. It's easier to treat colonies. It's easier to make splits from colonies. It's easier to find the queen. I have not seen it impede my honey production whatsoever. It just saves me a lot of time. I think it's great. And more people need to, I think, try it out. But you need to understand it first. What is your queen castle 2 to 3 frame process? So basically, I'm going to stick a good frame of calf brood in there with adhering bees and another shake of bees because I always want to make sure that the bees are getting plenty of reserves. And then I'm going to have holes drilled in the lid where I can put feed jars on top inverted to where the bees have plenty of feed. And I'm going to put a queen cell down in there. And then if the bees start expanding, they can start covering and drawing comb onto those other frames that are in there. But I want to have that little bit of extra space. And also with my 3 frame, oh, you're talking about the 2 to 3 frame process with probably with Zach. I really don't have time to explain all of that here. But the main thing is with any mating nuke is you can't let them get too strong, can't let them get too weak. You got to keep feed on them if there's not enough coming in. But I want to see the queen lay for at least 2 weeks minimum. A lot of times, more often than not, they're laying for 3 weeks, which is shown to be better. And I want to see a good laying pattern because, for me, I don't want to just ship something off that's kind of less subpar because then I'm going to have to deal with the consequences of someone who's disgruntled or something like that. So we like to monitor them a lot, and I'm not a big producer or anything like that either. And I hope to probably never be a giant producer. I want to keep this somewhat fun. Yeah, I don't think honey production drops with single brood management. Again, I had single brood managed colonies that produce well over 100 pounds, and for my area is very good. And then I had some doubles that produced the same, but the problem is sometimes the queen gets up there if you don't have an excluder and lays up all in different spaces and whatnot. So doubles works, single brood hive management works, but for me, the single brood management system is what I'm going for. I keep a deep and a medium for overwintering also. Yeah, a lot of commercial guys are doing that as well. They'll have a story and a half, and they'll take them to the almonds like that. Yeah, Gus, yeah, he sees more. He says he sees more production from singles, and he very well could be right. He's had more years experience using them than I have, and he produces a lot of honey down there in the Memphis area. Yeah, Gus is kind of he's is over around Memphis. He's not technically in Memphis. Yeah, and if single brood chambers are used appropriately, they work very, very well. Ian Stepler's got some good videos on that. Do you have to feed more if you use single brood boxes, not enough overwintered honey? All right, so Jerome Bee Farm is wanting to know about that. And that all depends on what you do. Now, typically what I do is I manage them in a single, but then I split them after the honey flow, and then I feed them through summer and beef them both up. And then hopefully the fall flow is good, and they'll be able to capitalize a lot on the fall flow. And some of my bee yards, my bigger colonies, I don't have to feed at all. You can always leave them honey from above the excluder. But yeah, there's not going to be enough left in that single brood box by itself to sustain that colony. This is one of the reasons why, kind of when I look at the flow hive system, where it's just a single brood box and the flow hive on top, I'm just like, what? The flow hives are neat, but just like anything, there's pros and cons. And if that thing's solid full of honey, well, that's fantastic. The problem is you pull all that off. Where's the bees' food? Now, some people live in areas like my buddy does in Hawaii, and there's nectar flow in different parts of the island nearly year around. Lucky dog. Here, that's not the case. I mean, goodness, we have good nectar for like 3.5 months, if that. That's it for the whole year, and that's not straight. We have a spring flow and then the fall flow, and the fall flow is hit or miss, and that's just the way it is here. Tennessee, you can produce good honey here, but your bees are going to have to be in good shape because they've got to take advantage of it when the getting's good. A lot of places are like that. Um, but yeah, the flow hive and any system that's single brood, you're going to have to either feed them heavily if you remove everything, or you're going to have to leave them something. That's just the way it is. Okay, where are we at? Where are we at? Oh, did he? I don't see it. Depends on your conditions. Got to manage those hives to what you want to achieve. And then that's exactly right. And I feel like a lot of us get caught up in this blame game of, you're not keeping bees the way I think they should be kept. And so you're doing it bad or you're doing it wrong, all that kind of stuff. And I will never keep bees like Ian. And I am certain if he ever tried to keep bees like I do, he'd lose all of his bees, I'm sure. It won't work in Canada. And I think we all need to get over ourselves just a little bit. I've definitely been there before where we get set in our ways, and this is, oh, you can't ever feed sugar, or you can't ever use a treatment, or you have to use treatments, or stuff like that. Ultimately, we just need to focus on ourselves more, and I think we need to collaborate whether we agree on everything or not. I learn a lot more from people that do things differently. Gus manages his bees differently. He has to. Where he's at, his temperature there close to the rivers down there, plus all the cotton farming, the agriculture, he's got a kind of two-edged sword. He was just telling me the other day, so they've got, during certain times of the year, they have different, just acres and acres of cotton, produce cotton honey, all kinds of different things. But then right now they're spraying those fields and they're killing all the dead nettle and henbit and all these pollens and stuff in order to be able to achieve that. So everyone's got different pros and cons that are going to have to adjust with. And I think we need to, instead of focusing on our differences, we need to focus on our similarities and be open-minded to maybe learning something that we're not doing now. Do I use queenless cell builders or queen right cell builders? Ian, I use queen right cell finishers, and then I use a queenless starter. So so cell builders, would that be considered a finisher? I would think. So I do use a double deep cell finisher with the queen down below the excluder. Of course, the cells up top. Let's see here. Do you do spring alcohol washes? I typically don't unless I see issues. If the colony's not building up right, if the brood looks funny, a lot of people get on to me for this because when in doubt, I look for Varroa first. I've just been burnt by them way too many times. But yeah, I'll do alcohol washes any time of the year, but primarily after honey poll in June and then around August again. Do you transfer the 3 frames into a Nuke box after they fill it up? Yeah, thanks. So Merry Christmas, some 2.0. So we when we get those nukes, say we're done for the season, and we've got they're full of bees, we'll put them over into a 5-frame nuke, or like with the system that we have that has a 3 and a 3 and a 3, you can remove one of those dividers, stick it in the middle. Now you've got two, like 2 5-frames, and then now you're able to just keep them in there like that instead. But you totally can put them over into a 5-frame nuke or whatever and build them up. Also, I found them really handy this year on a couple colonies that went drone layered, and I just plugged them in. It gave the big hives a little bit of a boost. Plus, it gave them a laying queen that was good, and then they also a cohort of bees with her that followed her all the way. They're very, very useful. Let's see here. Do you ever have your best hives produce drones on purpose to saturate your area with better drone genetics? Yeah, we do have hives, and we specifically, when we put those drone combs in, you can do foundationless for this, and it works really good. But also those green Pierco, or you can get them from Acorn, I think now. Drone combs, you can stick them down in there, and I like to stick them out away from my bee yards. But yes, you put special extra drone combs in there to ensure that they're producing good drones. And we don't just want any hive out there. These are queens that weren't the most exceptional. The most exceptional queens we're grafting from. The ones that almost made the cut typically are the ones that are drone colonies that are flooding the area with drones. Oh, so, Ian, I'm just messing with you, man. Laurel, I'm not even sure she said anything about it. She does like, it's funny how girls like accents. Now, probably some girl from Canada's watching this thinking, man, Cayman's got a really hot accent. Are you okay over there? I'll wait next time till after you've taken a full sip of water. But hey, thanks for coming in, Ian, a whole lot. We love your videos. Keep doing them. Yeah, and hopefully we'll have you on one of these chats one of these days. All right, so Beekeeper asks, Cayman, how did your high mite count hive do through the winter? Are they still going? They are. And hey, if I had $100 that Laura would let me bet, I would have bet it firmly that they would not have made it this far and start building up. But right now, they kind of look like they almost might start getting some momentum and growing a little bit. Now, I have been feeding them pollen patties just like everything else. I have not given them any type of medication. I did treat the crap out of the colony. 2 Apivar strips, and 8 rounds of OAV. Now, of course, the Apivar strips have been out many, many, many months ago, but the mite levels are like not even showing up. But there's not a whole lot of bees in there right now. We're looking at about 3 frames of bees, but they are acting like maybe the viruses have cleared up a little bit. That's my concern now. Are the bees going to be able to get the viruses out of their systems and grow? More often than not, they don't. But this hive is looking like it's going to try a little bit. But I'm just going to see how they do and go from there. I'm feeding them some Pro Sweet, and so far so good. So Clueless Beekeeping asked, did you change the queen on that high mite count hive? And I think it was in our first or second video I mentioned that we did. After we saw that high mite count, we started treating with oxalic acid vapor, and I requeened, I believe, between treatment 1 and treatment 2. So she was introduced and we started treating. It might have been better to treat a bunch before and then go it with the queen, but so far so good. But the point to take away from that little experiment with that hive is don't let your mites get that high. It's so they start getting that high, things get hard, and there's no reason to do that to your bees and yourself. It's funny. And we're stopping putting on our pollen patties. We're early this year with the pollens, but there's so much pollen that's been coming in. I'm having to, the bees aren't taking it anymore, hardly. I mean, unless we get a cold snap, I'm probably not going to throw a whole lot more patties. But again, I'm in Tennessee, so, but I fed less patties this spring. Well, I call it spring, this winter, than I usually do. Can worker bees transfer an egg into a queen cup? I sometimes think it's possible. I don't know if they do. I do know that they push the queens around whenever they're wanting to supersede the queen or swarm. They will kind of coax the queen into laying into those cups. The queen's getting old. They're going to coax her to lay up into those cups and then make some superseders. But yeah, I totally changed the queen on that hive. Someone you pointed out today, because I don't always do things the safest way. Because if you're a farmer, a legit farmer, and all that kind of stuff, at some point you're going to do some things that don't meet the most safest stuff. And in my YouTube channel, I'm trying to keep it real. I actually still do some things for safety purposes and showing people that I normally would not do. So I try to be a little bit more safe, but at the same time, I don't want to be one of those super safe guys that's like, you've got to do this and you've got to do that one, because that's boring. I don't want to hear that. I'm just one of those type of people. If you want to be super safe, that's awesome. You need to be super safe. But things happen. People get stung. I get cut. I got cut 5 times on Wednesday. I had a terrible day Wednesday. My new syrup pump that I just purchased was dead on arrival. It didn't work at all, and I needed it right then. Thank goodness we had a old Walter T. Kelly honey pump, or we would be in big trouble. We'd be up the creek with no paddles and a hole in the boat. And I cut my hands 5 times that day. One really good, and then my pump wouldn't work. It was just one of those days from where, and we all have those days. But safety. I've been working with power tools for over 2 decades, and I've never cut myself with a saw blade until the other night, and it was barely moving. It got my attention. It was like midnight. I've been working too much, too long, and I just got myself a little bit right there. Very fortunate it wasn't worse. But a lot of people get on to me about safety stuff in here, and you need to be safe. But at the same time, I'm going to keep my channel real. And so you're not always going to see stuff on my channel that's going to maybe suit your fancy on what safety is. Hey, Larry Lee. Hey, how's it going over there? Way out in the Pacific Northwest. #1 fan. Hope you're doing well. I haven't seen Rich in a while. Yeah, Gus, let me know if you catch any swarm traps down there. Hey, Hi-Fi. Good to hear that about the Apame pollen traps. I haven't tried them yet. I'm going to be trying 2 or 3 of them this year, just because I need the pollen. I've also got a Sundance pollen trap. I've got so many different things to try out this year. I'm just hoping that I'm going to have time to be able to get good videos on all of them. It's just there's a lot to get to, but pollen is awesome. Yeah, I'm liable now. I am, but and I understand that when I'm talking to all these people and whatnot, that I have a certain degree of responsibility to not, be holding a chainsaw between my legs blade first and then trying to crank the thing or anything like that. But at the same time, I want my channel to be real, and I definitely keep bees without bee suits a lot. Sometimes I wear a suit, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I don't wear eye protection, and I probably should. My grandpa would not be happy. What treatment do you use when mite levels get high and you have honey supers on? Thymol? You actually can't use thymol in this country with honey supers on. Um, it probably isn't bad for humans because we use a lot of thymol in organic soaps and Listerine and different things like that. And so it probably wouldn't be bad for humans, but who wants thymol flavored honey? But it's not legal as well. So we can't use thymol we do everything that we can to make sure the mite levels are not high when there's honey supers on. And if there are, I would just rather remove the supers, stop producing honey, and treat that colony and use it for making queens and making nukes later. That's the advantage of having a lot of bees and not having to focus just 100% on honey production, is the fact that if this colony has an issue, even though it's strong but it has a lot of mites, I can then use it. I can clean it up, and then I can figure out another way to use it. Ideally, we should have already taken care of the mites in wintertime or in fall, both really. Let's see here. Did my hive changeovers today? Very grumpy girls. Yeah. Whew, yeah, Crusher. They've been grumpy the last week or so. Do you ever reuse plastic foundation after it's scraped down, soaked in bleach solution, and pressure washed, then recoated with wax? Oh, that'll totally work. That's a lot of cleaning work right there. Honestly, I've got a pressure washer down in the basement. You can pressure wash those things. Unless there's a disease, I wouldn't worry about anything else. There's nothing wrong with some bleach solution to clean some things up. Me personally, I would just pressure wash that thing off and then re-wax it. Totally can be done. That's one of the nice things about them. Hey, Melissa's Harvest. Thanks for coming on. What's up, Laura? We're not on Twitter. I think we have an Instagram dealio, but we might work on a Twitter. We don't even have hardly time to put up a website right now, but we're really trying. And thanks again, everyone who's gone through our links and stuff like that. Even if you're not purchasing a product on our specific list, going through our links really helps support the channel, and it really adds up. Thanks again, everyone who's helped us in so many different ways. Just letting other people know, it's very, very humbling to be here. Oh, and thanks, Joe, for Gail, of being our new Patreon. So thank you so much for supporting our channel. Thank you very much. This is so crazy. Now, I have not tried the AZ Hive at all. I will say on the I'm going to be trying out some more insulated hives. I really think, and I've said this before, I'll just say it again real quick. I think as Americans, we need to look more into the insulated hive. It makes a lot of sense in a lot of different ways. I'm going to try to do a video that's pretty comprehensive on that. And some things I think about insulation that made me raise my eyebrows when I read it. And I'm going to be sharing that hopefully next week in a video. And there's always more to learn. I mean, goodness, 100 years ago, a little over 100 years ago, they didn't know how to graft queens. There's a lot of things they didn't know how to do. And, they didn't have the pests that we do now. Life changes and things change. I mean, look at this. I don't want to get talking about this and everybody talking about the coronavirus, but I am going to bring it up because, no one was talking about this time last year. Life changes, things change. How do we know that we don't get a new beekeep virus with our bees within the next year or two. It totally can happen. The world changes. So someone asked what happened to the lizard. I'm facing it away from the lizard. I probably need to get back to that, but we actually have a green anole and a brown anole, Anole, and they are great, easy to keep. They're fun to watch. They change colors to a degree, especially the green anoles, and they love to climb on pothos, and they're just a lot of fun. Easy keepers. Let's see. Hey, thanks for coming from Croatia. Let's see. Yeah, I didn't get the Lysin nukes. I actually got the Paradise ones from Blue Sky Bee Supply. They're made in Finland. And you would think styrofoam would be pretty soft, but not this stuff. I mean, this thing, it feels like you can almost knock somebody out with. This is one of the bottom boards on a two-way nuke that I'll be using this year. And it'll be pretty interesting. Yeah, and on the Apame stuff, I'm tinkering around with that just a little bit. They're expensive though. So but I mean, goodness, there's people buying flow hives out there. So I'm just doing videos on them because there's not a whole lot of a good playlist on Apame stuff. And I want to be the guy that has a good playlist that if someone wants to purchase one, they can watch my videos. I'm going to try to talk more about walkaway splits this year. I started to last year, and there's a lot of things I want to do. Once things start getting crazy and we're making all these hundreds of nukes and raising the queens and honey production hits and swarm control hits, it's going to be really hard to do the videos to the extent that I want. And so I'm going to have to really focus on what's most important. And my primary goal with this channel is getting people to having more success with their bees, to where they can make more splits. They can raise their own queens if they desire. They can keep their bees from swarming, overwintering good. Those are the main things right there. There's a lot of other little things, and I cover them when it's convenient for me. But that's really what the videos come down to, is what I can fit in naturally and easily. What is the thickness of the rim spacer on your new lids? It is 1/2 inch, and I have only used them now for a handful of weeks. I'm loving it. And I'm not the one that came up with that. Ian Stepler uses those. There's a lot of commercial guys who have used those on thousands of hives. And, say what you will about commercial beekeepers, their bees go through a lot. And these guys, they know a lot too. You cannot truck your bees all over the country and do all the things that they do with them and be a complete idiot. Now, and stay in the beekeeping game very long. Keeping bees on a large scale is very hard. And a lot of guys love that 1/2 inch rim. And I think I'm going to be one of them. So Landon Nelson asks, what's the differences between honeybee breeds, Italian Carnies, Carniolan, Saskatraz, Russian, etc.? So there's not a whole lot of differences between some of those. Of course, you have your Italian, which is very common. I'm talking about the U.S. here. Now, in other countries, the UK, you got your Apis mellifera, the German black bee. We have a little bit of that trickled into the genetics here, but nothing. Some people claim they have really pure strains of that, and that's just ridiculous. There's no pure strains of anything around here. You can buy some stuff, but everything's got a little bit of something. But Italian bees, they typically keep bigger colonies. They eat a lot more. When they're healthy, they produce a lot of honey. And some strains are gentle and some strains are not. Carnies tend to be a little bit more wise with their food stores, but not all of them. Some carnies are pretty heavy eaters too. And over time, when you raise your own queens, you select on purpose or by accident for certain traits. So you have to be careful. But carnies typically are more conservative. They're more sensitive to when flows start and stop. And typically, I think they're a little bit more better disposed as far as gentle or aggressive behavior. Now, Russians are basically just a carny that's been over and separated for a long period of time, but it's basically the same type of bee. It's just been selected in a different area for so long. It's just kind of a more aggressive, if you will, version of a carny. They're very sensitive to stops and starts of flows, more prone to swarming. It just all comes down to selection. Bees can be extremely diverse, even within the same type of bee. You can take, I bet you could take 10 breeders. They all had 100 hives from the same original queen. If you came back 20 years later and they were all grafting from that line and they all were going for different traits, you'd probably see some very big differences, extreme differences. We don't have a lot of Caucasian over here. A lot of people didn't like them. They produce a lot of propolis. I have no problem with that. I think a lot of it had to do with what they were able to produce honey wise and bee wise and just stuff. I don't have a lot of experience with the Caucasians, but there's a lot of variables out there, and even within the different groups, again, there's a lot of variables. So I have some Italians that I love, and I've got some carnies that I love, and I've got some within both of those that don't do as good. And that's just beekeeping. There's no such thing as a super bee. We just do our best. Yeah, carnies are more gray, black looking. Their bands typically aren't bright yellow when they do have a little bit of yellow. Yeah, you might want to tag. I mean, I want to fix it. Get off here a little bit. So I don't know. It's up to you. Perfect bee. The only super bee is a car. Right. Well, and it's easy, especially I think when you're new. I know when I was new, I fell into this trap multiple times where somebody's selling this product that's going to help your bees be healthy. This is the product. This is the bee. This is the resistant bee. This is the best gentle bee. This whatever. If people will buy it, somebody will claim it, whether it's realistic or not. And when you're new, you don't hardly know what to do. And I made a lot of boneheaded decisions. I still make some boneheaded decisions. Let me tell you. And then things just happen to everybody too. It's just like that syrup pump that I purchased. I was super excited about it. Dropped almost $1,600 on the thing. I needed it right then. I should have got it a month before, but I was waiting. It was going to be more convenient for me to just pick it up on my way to one of the conferences I was talking at. And I bring it back, and it doesn't work. I don't know what's wrong with it. Thank goodness I've got a honey pump, and it pumps about 4 gallons to the minute, and that's cold syrup. It's an awesome pump. It's like 60 something degrees syrup, and it'll still pump it at 4 gallons to the minute. So I think it's like an 80s model Walter T. Kelly. I might do a short video on that. I think Kelly still makes some of those. I want to talk to Jennifer there at Kelly's, because I do know they still make some of the stuff that Kelly's originally had there. And I want to see if they had it, because I've been really happy with that pump. Yes. More people die from the regular flu. Yeah. Well, possibly. Possibly. Yeah, Brent, I'm on a first name basis. I've met Jennifer half my life ago. She's been with Kelly's for many years, and one thing I like about Kelly's more than anywhere else is now that they're being managed better and they have the resources to do what they need to do, they're easy to deal with again, and they still have great personnel. But there for a time, the people that owned Kelly's Bees a few years ago, before Man Lake bought them out, were running them into the ground, and we were fixing to probably lose them. So some people are upset that Man Lake purchased Kelly's, but there's a good chance that if someone would have not stepped in and done so, that Kelly's bees could have very well just disappeared altogether, which would have been a shame for local beekeepers. And for me, it's actually been really great. because there's some products now that I needed from Man Lake that are closer and I can pick up. So yeah, Ruby's there, Jacinda's there. Kelly's has some great folks, and people ask me about my Vel. I get those from Kelly's, the new ones and the old ones. They are the best to see out of, and I like the fact that they sit on your head. Some people don't like the design. See, I have a big head, so it sticks in there really good, and it's just I can turn it around, and I don't have to worry about Laurel's. She's like, it's too big. She has to wear a ball cap, but she'll get over it. Did you breed your bees for gentleness? They always seem so calm. Good question, Daniel. And I do. I mean, if we have bees that are what I call head hunters and that come after us and try to get us on the heads, we're walking away from them, or just unnecessarily aggressive, then we are going to get rid of those. We're going to requeen them. So we're naturally getting that out of our hives. And we definitely are. One of our first things that we look for is gentle behavior. Our kids play out in the yard with the bees, and I don't want bees that are going after my kids. I don't like being stung. Nobody does. And I also have neighbors to think of. So definitely gentleness is really high up there. And I feel like I could do a much better job if I had one of these days. I'm going to have more time to focus on that stuff. Let's see. So hi-fi, I don't know if they have this in Kentucky, but I know in the state of Tennessee they have a farm tax card that you can get, and if you're a farmer or a beekeeper, you don't have to pay sales tax, which is really handy. By the way, it's really handy. Tennessee has made some really good decisions, and that's why our economy is doing pretty well. A lot of people are moving from other states to here. Hi-Fi is asking, no thought that hot bees are healthier bees. I disagree with that. Now I could be wrong, but I know a lot of beekeepers who have very gentle bees that are very, very successful. And I look at some of the breeders, some of the renowned breeders of the last 40 or 50 years, and pretty much they all selected for gentle behavior. And brother Adam created Buckfast bee that was very well, the first one that was really resistant to tracheal, and it was a very gentle bee. I don't know. I mean, could you breed for gentleness and actually lose some edge on some things that are important? Absolutely. And that's why you can't just breed for one thing. And we don't just look at gentle behavior. If we're not seeing resistance to the brood diseases and other things that we want to see, then it doesn't matter if it's the most gentle bee in the bee yard, then that's not enough. So we have to be really careful in how we select. Just say no to headhunters. Yeah, pretty much. Let's see. So as far as moving bees and stuff like that, I've got a little lift that I use. Moving bees at night. Moving bees is never fun. I hate moving bees, but it's got to be done sometimes. Let's see. From a strong hive, how many frames of brood do I want to leave behind after making splits? That's a hard question. It really just depends on what you want and what you have to work with. Um, Willie, I have a couple videos on splitting. If you look in my playlist on the channel, I've got a couple videos, and I think they're some of my better ones, right? You see the whole process of me splitting a couple hives, and I do a 5-frame nucleus colony. I make a 5-frame nuke, but I don't make it like 5 frames necessarily strong with all brood. I shake a lot of bees in there, and I make one that's more of a 10-frame split where I broke the hive right down in half. And watching those would probably give you a good idea of what you have to work with in comparison to what those hives had, and kind of what you can get from it. Um, I'd rather have 2 strong hives than 5 small ones. That's just myself. But again, a lot depends on the flow up ahead and different things like that. And Brent did bring up a good point. Sometimes bees being mean is a sign that bees are having serious problems, and that can be the case. I've had some hives that were as gentle as kittens, and they go through a queenless period where they're requeening, supersedure, all that stuff, and they will come after you in droves if you go in while they're in the middle of that process. There are certain things that can happen weather-wise, barometric pressures and whatnot, queenlessness, high varroa levels. Sometimes this happens, not always, but certain conditions can cause the bees to behave differently and make them more aggressive. Bigger hives are more aggressive than little hives, typically. And let me tell you, bees that are right after the flow, and you've got these massive colonies, and then all of a sudden the flow's done, and there's all these forager bees with nothing better to do than to look at the beekeeper and think, how am I going to make his day interesting since he's made our day interesting? And they do. Can you speak a little on the size to graft? And I'm sure what he means by that is the size of the larvae. Laurel, can you hand me that? Never mind. Here it is. Oh, doggone. There's another book by Lawrence Connor over there. I don't know. Maybe they can see this one. Yeah, I think this is going to work, Laurel. It's very small. Some people want it as small as possible. And kind of something that makes it really easy is if you see a frame and you see a lot of eggs up here, and then right below it, there's little larvae, that's usually a good sign to graft. Some people actually graft a little older than what's recommended and say they get good results. I like to err on the side of a little small. Okay, great. This is why, I don't make money off of these. And, if you go through a bee supply or something like that, now if you guys go through Amazon, we do get a small percentage, but, it doesn't cost you any more. But if you're going to go through Amazon, you go through our links, that does help support our channel. And it really adds up just a little bit here and there. But I do like these books. And here's a picture right here. I don't know how well you can see this. All right. Now, this one right here is you can see kind of floating a little bit of jelly. That's a great size right there. They're really young. They haven't been hatched out very long at all. Works great. Boomer Sooner. Roll Tide. Roll Tide. Welcome to the live chat. Thanks for coming on, Boomer Sooner. I have not tried the Nikon system, Ted. Thanks, Ben Foster. I have not had to deal with Africanized bees at all in my area, and that can be a problem. I have a couple buddies who live in heavy Africanized bee areas, and they show me videos of them working their bees, and some people are used to it, but they have to wear almost padded bee suits, and the bees are just all over you. It's totally different. That's just something they're going to have to deal with. If they want gentle bees, they usually have to order queens from out of state because there's just too many hot drones in the area. Closer. But as far as the larvae goes, I think the main thing is just trying to get them at a young age. Let's see if I can get a better picture here. Let's see. Wow, that is. I'm not really seeing a good one on here other than what I showed you guys. But when you are going through your colonies, look for those eggs. Get yourself a magnifying glass if you have to. And then try to look on the same frame and see the stuff that's it's what we graft from is barely larger than an egg. Barely larger. Now, some people, and some of these guys are good beekeepers, they graft bigger than what's recommended. And they'd be much easier to graft. And they say they get good results. I don't know. I usually go for the smallest one. So someone was telling me the other day that the Texas A&M Labs is no longer testing honey. Is that true? I'm not sure if that's true or not. All right. Any thoughts on small cell frames? They definitely don't hurt. But by themselves, they're not enough to control varroa. However, if they do slow them down, it's just a little bit, and the Varroa will still cause problems. However, there is some research showing that it helps maybe a little bit. So I'm thinking that it's just another tool in the toolbox. If you're willing to do it, throw it in there, use that along with some other things, and every little bit adds up. But usually, one thing by itself is not enough. In my experience with using small cell and many other guys that I respect, it's not enough by itself. But there's nothing necessarily wrong with it. Let's see. The Lee 1289 is Dustin worth the headache. All right, we need someone to block some stuff, I think. Let's see. So where do you get the dolly with the fork? So the dolly that I use is a genie lift. I got it at an auction. Sometimes you can find them cheaper. There are some lifts out there that are a little bit more geared towards beekeeping. They're very expensive, like $1,400, $1,500. But I just have a genie lift, and it works very good for odd job. I can move a lot of stuff around here with it. Let's see. When do you do your first OA treatment in the spring? Usually I don't do any in the spring. Usually I do them in the winter time. And then I'm going to, as when I pull, I'll knock them in the winter time. I should be knocking the mites back to ground zero. Hit them hard. Bees are broodless a lot of times in wintertime. Oxalic acid vapor is perfect that time of the year. Knock them back. And I don't treat again until after I pull the honey supers in June. Dragon's bees here. I was curious, how do you keep your bees well hydrated? Well, bees thankfully are really good about flying out to creeks and rivers. And here in Tennessee, we have rain and lots of it. Lots of bodies of water. So the bees are able to go up and fill their crop up with water and bring it back to the hive. And in the wintertime, they will consume the condensation that comes off of the bees as they're heating the cluster and use that when needed. And when it's warm enough, they'll fly out and get some during the winter. Hey, Josh Wilson, you said you have 2 swarms today from your hives, but where are you located out of curiosity? Do you have another job outside of beekeeping? Yes, I do. But I'm going to be taking some time off for a while, and I've been trying to decide what direction that we're going to go. And I think we're going to be a little more conservative this year and try not to, as soon as we get through honey production and nuke cell season, we're probably going to take a break for a little while and focus on family a little bit more and trying to relax a little bit. You know, it's going to be hard to do, but we didn't do it at all last year. We hardly took any days off last year. And I mean any. And I'm not in good shape because of it, and no one is here. But yeah, I work another job, but definitely not going to be working that much longer for a while. What's your views on shipping queens in the summer heat? It can be done. And the main thing is a well ventilated box. You know, it depends on where you're shipping them. If you're shipping them to, Arizona, that's going to be rough. You know, depends on what your levels of heat are. And also how you're shipping them. I really like the new methods that a lot of us are using. And that's like if you're shipping queens, is you have the queens in their individual cages, and then you have a bunch of nurse bees shook in there with them, a sponge in there to where the nurse bees can go and suck water out of that to help cool themselves down. They can fan through the screens on the edge of the boxes, move some air through there, and also they can use that water to hydrate themselves. You also have some candy in there so they can eat if they need to if it's cool and warm themselves up. I'll try in the future to do a short little, maybe a video on that. It's not a whole lot of a video, but we'll try to show some pictures at least. Again, if you follow me on Facebook, if you do that, I show some stuff on Facebook that it's just too short, or just little things pictures I post on Facebook and stuff like that. Trying to do a little more Instagram if I get a chance, but Facebook I do quite a bit on my personal page. Hey Baha Jean, thanks for the compliment, and good luck with your bees this year in North Carolina. I bet you all produce a lot of pollen in that area if it's anything like this area. I think it is. Hey Carico, there's those aren't peaches, they are pears and chia seeds. Oh yeah, and blackberry. The chia seeds are good for my gut, so they tell me. Okay, yeah, Texas A&M. Yeah, it is 9 p.m. I want to know where Costco is getting USA made honey where they can sell 3 pounds for $9.99. Yeah, I know. And they're probably not. What really bothers me is the fact that you can go to Costco, try their honey, go to Walmart, you can go to Sam's Club, you can go if you just get generic honey, then you can go to your local Piggly Wiggly store or somewhere like that and get a jar of honey, and it all tastes the same and pretty bad too, if you ask me. When I was a kid, I hated honey. My parents, get one of those bears, and it's not real honey, most of it, maybe a small percentage. And see, think about this. People ask me this a lot. What is fake and what is real, and how can we find it out? And it's hard because humans can be brilliant and sometimes in a devious manner. And what they're doing is a lot of times they're taking the fake stuff that even through one of the ways you can look for honey is as the sunlight comes through it, the sunlight will either bend towards the left or the right, depending on the type of, if it's a syrup or if it's honey. Well, for one, they match up rice syrups and stuff that are going to bend the same way honey does. There's a lot of things that they can do to invert things now with technology. Then on top of that, they're going to take some pollen, or they're going to take some honey with pollen, or both, and they're going to mix a small percentage up in there. So if somebody comes along with the thing, like, oh, there's real pollen in there, and this must be real honey. Plus, if you have enough money, there's a lot of things that you can make happen, whether it should be or not. So that's why when it comes to getting food, when it comes to getting honey, whatever it is, it's really best to know the producer. Hey, Michael, thanks so much for donating to this channel on PayPal. That is a awesome way to do it, and we really appreciate you supporting our channel through PayPal. But yeah, more than likely, the junk that you get in the store is just what it is. It's junk, and but there are devious ways to make it to where it's very, very difficult to tell what it is, And again, the right palms are being greased to allow this junk, cheap honey to come into the United States. And it's hurting the professional beekeeper, and it's hurting the consumer. And I think it trickles down and hurts the hobby beekeeper as well to a certain degree. So Chris Banks, any update on the Apame Hive? I actually have a video or two that I'm going to be showing on the Apame Hive. I've got some bees in one now. I haven't uploaded the video yet, but it should be up before too long. The Apame and the other insulated hives, I'm really excited to use them because I've never used insulated hives. It makes a lot of sense to use insulated hives. I grew up in a house that was built in the 70s. We had those old single pane aluminum windows, and literally, if it blew hard outside, you could feel it moving through the house. My dad, right after all the kids got kicked out of the house, and all of a sudden the grocery bill went from $1,000 a month down to like 200. Three boys, all teenagers at the same time. And they invested in new doors and windows throughout the house. And that place is like it's like being inside a cave, like a tomb. There's just no air movement at all. Dad says that he saved like over 50 to 60% on his heating bill during the winter months. And it makes sense that the bees, honey is like fuel to them. They're burning that all winter long. And so if it's taking less energy for them to be able to do what they need to do, then it's going to conserve that energy. They're going to have more honey left. Also, it's going to provide more brood possibly because they're able to, instead of being really tightly clustered, they can loosen up a little bit and then rear more brood earlier in the season. And in the summertime, when they're stressed out, there's not a lot of nutrition here. They're able to keep the brood nest cooler and not have to work so hard hauling in water and fanning constantly to cool the hive down, which also burns up honey or resources. So they make a lot of sense in a lot of ways. They're a little bit more expensive. I haven't seen any good tests here in the United States. I'm hoping to be the one that does that. And we're going to actually put up a chart up here before too long and kind of have a goal for what we need to be able to get to the test yard where we're going to be testing insulated hives and genetics and multiple different things. And honestly, I mean, we're not expecting people just like, hey, man, here's $50. I'll tell you, Audible is a way that nobody pays anything, and it really significantly impacts our channel. And you can get a free book out of it. I think that's the best way to do it. I'll leave the link below in the comments of this video when it's over. I'll leave it in the description in almost every one of our videos. Yeah, it's already in the description of this one. But so, yeah, those Pro Nuke walls are thin, Brent. Really thin. Apamay double deep hives never even touched the upper box. Never even touched something. Yeah, and see, just because I'm trying out a lot of these Apamay and stuff like that, it doesn't mean you're going to see me all of a sudden stick a few hundred Apamay hives out here. I can't afford that. But they're really neat. And I think we need to learn about them. That's what this channel is for. It's not necessarily learning about just what I prefer to do, but also learning about other things outside the world of beekeeping. I'm really hoping in the future that I'm going to be able to have the time to be able to go to beekeepers. I would love to be able to fly up to Canada and visit Ian. I know he has his own videos, but there's people like him that I could see what they're doing and show it on video. And I would really enjoy to do that. I want to learn more about the world of bees. There's so much to learn, so much. Now, as far as the CDX plywood, the CDX works very good. It's just like anything, you have to coat it really well. If you dip it, it works excellent. Yeah, and I would totally buy something like an Apamay before a flow as well. I mean, you could get a lot more bang for your buck for sure. Spray your Pro Nukes with bed liner. That might insulate them just a little bit. If you do that, let me know. That would be an interesting video. Okay. Yeah, I mean, there's people all across the world, and there's people around here too. There's a lot of really cool beekeepers. The problem is many of the good beekeepers out there, they get tired of Facebook groups and forums, and it's easy to do because the problem is when you start being successful, if you're going to be picked on. It happens to us. It happens to Ian. There's always going to be people that disagree with you. But there are going to be people that are going to be poking holes into like, oh, well, you're taking advantage of your bees because you're making money. So if you're making money, obviously, then you're doing evil things to your bees, which is not the case. If you are making money off of your bees, then your bees are healthy. Now, there are things that, some people don't agree with my methods. I do love wood, though. I love building wooden equipment, but I do want to learn more about insulation. and how that might be able to help my bees. This year, we had so many hives that struggle with nutritional stress. Fall was bad, was just terrible. And then on top of that, many of the hives seem to have run low on honey. Not all of them, going through winter, and it's hard to feed on those cold days. And feed's expensive. I don't like feeding sugar syrup. So if I had insulated my hives, would that make it to where I have to feed less, or maybe not at all some years, and make the difference? Are my bees going to be healthier because of that insulation? A lot of questions out there, and we need more answers. I know I'm a capitalist, man. I'm evil. Yeah, you do have to grow some thick skin if you're on YouTube. I know you know what I'm talking about, Jerome. But no matter, you could put out the world's best bee video out there. That's the most non-confrontational too. And somebody's going to come out there and just fillet you. It just happens, and it was really hard though. And for any of you guys, I know several of you on here have YouTube channels. It doesn't, I've seen Ian just get roasted, and he's got like almost 40,000 subs now. It doesn't go away. We get some really rough people that come on here sometimes, and it's going to happen to you. The problem is it's harder. And I remember when I had 300 or 400 subs, when you're at that level and you're getting it, it hurts a lot more because of the percentage wise. But that's why I want to thank every one of you guys, because your comments, your thumbs up, your suggestions, and I really want to get to all of your questions and your videos. There's nothing personal. Sometimes we just run into the time issues while we miss things. There's a lot of comments here. I can't keep up with them. But I want to thank you all for the encouragement that you give us. But yes, I mean, I think some people think, if we're successful, then that's a bad thing. But honestly, the more successful that we are, the more that we're going to be able to help get good information out there, the more testing that we're going to be able to do. And it might not help you because, you're like, well, this is the way I'm doing it. But that might help inspire you to try something different within the system that you're using. And maybe this video doesn't apply to you at all, but maybe our next video will. And that's where we try to keep it somewhat broad. But anyways, I'll get off of that. But thank you guys very much. I promised Laurel that I would not go past 9 o'clock. So I'm going to take this one last question and then I'm out of here. But so Hi-Fi came and I keep seeing feed bees bananas pop up here and there. Is there anything to it? And yes, there is. Bees, if you have an apple orchard, anything like that, whenever you drop any type of fruits, anything with sugars, and there's nothing else for them to forage, they're going to suck everything they can out of it, whether it's good for their gut long term or not. Some of these sugars, in good conditions, when it's warm, the bees can get out and fly and take a dump. It's fine. They can use those carbs as energy if necessary. But the problem is many of those sugars that have a lot of roughage in them, like fruit sugars and stuff, in areas or during times of the season where the bees can't get out and fly, they can cause a lot of yeast growth in their gut. That can cause a lot of bad dysentery. That can encourage gut problems and eczema and different things like that. A lot of people think when you see all the poop on the outside of the hive, that's nosema. That's not nosema. Now, nosema a lot of times is associated with that because whatever's causing the dysentery usually feeds right into that. But bananas can work. I mean, who's got that many bananas? That's what I want to know. They obviously don't have a 4-year-old son like I do. We can't keep bananas on the shelves for nothing. Brent, I don't know what to say about your comment. Little brother like you never had. Oh, David McDade. Okay, so David. No, see, I was wondering who you were. Now, you mentioned Dustin. I'm thinking you've watched some of the videos where Dustin's helped us out. I didn't realize that it was you and you actually had a relationship with him. I'm so sorry. But yeah, David makes sorghum out in another part of Tennessee, and it is delicious. And sorghum is pretty good, but it's kind of like a peasant sweetener compared to honey. I love a good sorghum. And honestly, if we ever get a chance to meet up again, I'll swap you some honey for some sorghum. I love that. But yeah. Anyways, guys and gals, thanks so much for coming on. I've got to get to sleep. I've got to apologize to my wife for several things that I've done on this video. Thanks everyone so much for the encouragement and the support. And I look forward to seeing you in another video. Thanks. End. Why will it not end? Ah, there we go.